could they say he was mentally ill? He didn't know what he was doing. He wasn't in his right mind.
I think that charge is almost certainly going to fail. This isn't an insanity defense here would be a real struggle because it's not merely, it's not understanding the quality of the act you're engaged in. And there's a whole bunch of conduct here that indicates a lack of insanity. The fact that he, chose a sniper rifle, scouted out the location beforehand, had an exit strategy, didn't carry a phone with him to avoid electronic detection. He did a lot of things to, wore a hat and sunglasses. He did all this stuff that was a sane attempt to evade capture, even though it ultimately failed, and I think was futile from the get-go, it seems to me. But he tried to evade capture. He chose a means of killing the guy and planned it out in a very premeditated way. None of this screams insanity to me. This all strikes me as very much he's clearly going to be found competent to stand trial, even if and any arguments about he was indoctrinated into some crazy belief system doesn't matter. That's not insanity. Insanity is the inability to understand what it is you're doing.
All right, guys, a difficult weekend. Tough start to the week. We got a lot to get through this week. A big show coming your way right now. We're going to talk a lot about Charlie Kirk. Congressman Andy Biggs spoke at the Kennedy Center last night as we paid tribute here in Washington, D.C. to Charlie. He's going to tell us about the event last night and what things look like going forward. And then Will Chamberlain with the Article 3 Project is going to break down the legal consequences, the case against this assassin, what his defense might be. And what about people at work who are posting all this stupid, nasty stuff? What are their legal protections or not? We'll ask him all of that. I got to tell you, I've never seen anybody in my 50-something years have an impact on the world like Charlie Kirk did. I mean, think about the world leaders, the NFL games, the motorcade, people just speaking out. Charlie wasn't a political pundit, as some on the left said. He led a movement, and he was the best at doing it. He sat there and wanted to engage in a conversation. It's unbelievable. And it was weird for me to hear his name come up at church. He wasn't Catholic. That's what I mean, though. He had such an impact on young, old, people of his denomination or not. It kept me thinking, like, you don't get to think about your obituary. Somebody else will write that for you. Maybe you can do a draft, I guess. But I was thinking, when someone does write it, what are they going to say that you did? What legacy are you going to leave behind? And I've been watching this response to Charlie Kirk, and I'm like, that's what we all want. To have an amazing impact that people from all over discuss what you've done, that your family gets up there. And the words of Erika Kirk Friday night, I couldn't believe the courage and conviction and faith that woman had. It was unbelievable, unreal. Her commitment to her faith is just something for, and look, I just got to say, I mean, these are young people. And the convictions that they have and the ability to have the courage to stand up there and do this, both what Charlie did and then what Erika did it's just amazing. But I want to say this before I get into Congressman Biggs and then Will Chamberlain, because I have two big subjects, Charlie and his impact, and then obviously the legal consequences. And tomorrow, by the way, Senator Ted Cruz will be here, Senator Eric Schmidt. We got a lot lined up all week. I got more comments about this both sides argument. And bear with me as I work through this, because it's a raw topic and I'm trying to do this. Because what I started to think about was the left wants to say, see, you guys have gone after people on our side too. Paul Pelosi, the Michigan legislators, or Minnesota legislators, my apologies, Whitmer, Shapiro. And that's the way they want to have this equivalency, that somehow it's the same, because we had people get hurt, you had people get hurt. But there's two different things that I think are important. The lead up to it and the response. Let me just tell you quickly what I mean by this. Poll after poll, survey after survey shows that the left believes that it's acceptable to have violence and, dare say it, people getting murdered. It's a fact. More and more people on the left find that it's acceptable to do this, and their leaders say nothing. They don't call them out. They don't tell them that's wrong. The fact, they encourage it. Chuck Schumer said, let's go get Gorsuch. Maxine Waters said, surround them. They encourage this. So they're sort of both sidesism doesn't count. And also the response. Look at the response to Annunciation Catholic Church, to the Ukrainian woman killed in North Carolina, to Charlie Kirk. What does our side do? Pray, gather, pay tribute, honor. What does their side do? Riot, vandalize, hurt people, destroy things. And there are leaders in the media excuse it all. It's in pursuit of the greater good. They must be able to heal. They're encouraged to do that. That's very different. Look at what Erika Kirk did the other night. She didn't call for revenge or destruction of buildings. That wouldn't honor Charlie's legacy. There is a big difference. It's not the same. The left wants to do it because they know they're wrong about this. And I'm sorry. I know that you're supposed to say, oh, well, we both need to take down the temperature. I'm willing to take it. I've always said violence is wrong. Now it's time for the leaders on the left to do that. Before I bring in Congressman Andy Biggs, though, I got to tell you, of all weeks, it's been a little difficult to get to sleep. And I continue to take my Beam Dream powder every single night. You guys know this. This is the cinnamon cocoa one. I crush this every night. Last night I did do the brownie fudge. It was amazing. But that has helped me fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up rip-roar and ready to go every single night. It's all natural. It's got reishi, L-theanine, apigenin, melatonin, magnesium, all the natural stuff in a great, amazing blend that I love to take every night. Before I go to bed, 30 minutes before, so I put 1 scoop in water, 30 seconds in the microwave. I'm not kidding. I get asked this more often than not. I swear to you, I take it every single night. I'll get out of bed if I miss it. Go to shopbeam.com/Spicer, code word Spicer, 40% off. You can pick any of the flavors you want. They're all amazing. Shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code word Spicer for up to 40% off. All right, before I get into talking about everything with these two gentlemen, I want to tell you about another great guy in my life. You know him, Leo Grillo from Delta Rescue. He has done amazing stuff with animals. Abandoned, abused, neglected. He takes care of it all. And that's why I love Leo Grillo and the work of Delta Rescue. But there's no government grants. There's no Politico Pro subscriptions, no USAID money. It's all contributions from people like me and you. I made a direct personal contribution to Delta Rescue. Please join me and go to deltarescue.org. Check out the videos, but make a personal donation to make this mission continue. And if you can, go to the estate planning kit. Think about something that you might have, a stock, a bond that can help make this an enduring mission. Thanks for your help. Without further ado, I want to bring in the Congressman from Arizona that spoke at the Kennedy Center last night, Congressman Andy Biggs. Congressman, good to see you. Thanks for being here under such difficult circumstances.
Thanks, Sean. It's always good to be with you. Thanks.
So I got to say, that tribute last night at the Kennedy Center that you were part of, and I want to get to your remarks in just a minute. How did it come together? I was shocked. I got someone on my team here sent me a note. Hey, they're going to be doing something at the Kennedy Center. I started to hear from a lot of my friends that are, affiliated with the Kennedy Center, hold Sunday night. Like, how did it all happen?
Well, so the way I understand it is that Jake Hoffman, who works with TPUSA, was tasked with doing this vigil that people wanted to do one in Washington, D.C. And Jake, this is what he does. He does this a lot, knows how to do it. And within 48 hours, he'd put together the TPUSA team and they had this out. He called me up like right away and said, "Hey, would you want to come back to DC and speak at this thing?" And I said, "Well, of course, yes, that'd be an honor." But I did talk to some of the others, and they also kind of received these notifications, and it just came together very quickly. It was kind of a modern day, I don't want to say miracle, but it was really amazing how that came together.
Yeah, I was taken, and for people who've never done events, to your point, like the logistics of getting a venue, getting the word out, and the thing that was so fascinating for people who don't know is they sent out an email to a lot of us and said, "Hey, Sunday night we're going to have an event. Location to be announced later." They knew, but they didn't want, for I'm sure security reasons. And to your point, like that, how many people were there? Like 3,000, 2,000, 3,000?
Yeah, I think the whole place holds about 2,500, and then they had about another 2,000 outside the door.
Oh my! And like I said, for those of you guys listening, like this, they didn't even tell you where it was going to be. They started putting out the word over the weekend. And when I saw the lines of people standing outside the Kennedy Center, I was taken back. Did you know who else was going to speak?
I knew a couple of the people that were going to speak because they were told I was going to speak, and so we kind of communicated. But the vast majority, I didn't know. Like, I didn't know Tulsi was going to be there, or RFK Jr., or just who else? Carrie Lake walked in. That surprised. I didn't know she was going to speak. I mean, yes. So I knew Anna was going to speak. Eli Crane was scheduled to speak, but he couldn't make it back. So that's kind of all I knew that was going to speak. And then they told me, you got 5 minutes. And I'm like, 5 minutes? There's so much you could say about Charlie, but what do you do?
But that, to your point, like, you guys have what? How many members of Congress in Arizona? 10?
We've got nine.
Apologies. You need one more.
We need one more.
And how did you have a great relationship with Charlie? Have you done a lot with TPUSA? Like, I know your district is near TPUSA, but like, what was it? Why did they, what's the background there between you and Charlie and TPUSA?
So like I say, I met Charlie a long time ago. And I wouldn't say that we're necessarily the closest of friends, but we talked periodically. I did a lot of his show a lot, and all, radio, and we did rallies together. He endorsed me for governor. He put on a rally at the Biltmore that had 3,000 people, at it, for me to run for governor. So, I mean, we talked about politics and stuff. And every time we did it on the air, he and I would actually get to talking before about this, that, or the other thing. But also, I have my daughter worked for TPUSA for a little bit, and then I have nephews who have worked for Charlie for 8 years or so. They have worked very closely with Charlie, and so and then his co-founder Tyler Boyer, Sean, grew up kind of kitty corner across the street from us. So I've known him forever. You know what I mean? So I've known TPUSA since very early on, and I've known Charlie and and a lot of people that were very close to Charlie. So I was honored to be asked. I probably didn't deserve to be asked, but I was honored to be asked.
Well, I got to say, I enjoyed your remarks, because I think that there's different angles. I loved when Anna spoke about, like, her relationship with Charlie, her urging her to run for Congress. Caroline spoke in that way as well. But you can give us some real insight into what it's like in Arizona that I don't think we have. Because I was listening. I didn't realize, I mean, I've been out there. And I've told people it's like driving onto a movie set. You come down, there's two buildings on either side, it goes down, and there's another one on the far end of the lot. I mean, what has become? And so they were like, it's 1,000 people. And I just, what is it? What impact has this had specifically on Arizona and the Phoenix area?
Well, first of all, you're right. I mean, this goes back to when I first knew, I'm not even sure they had that building then, but I remember the first building on that location, and now they have whatever it is, 6 buildings or something like that, all filled with people working. But it has had a tremendous impact in Arizona, on Arizona's political scene. So let me give you an example. This is how important they were. So TPUSA, Charlie and Tyler and Jake, and these guys that work with Tyler, they also put together and worked with a coalition of other grassroots organizations. And they turned out, Sean, in the last election, the 2024 election, in a battleground state, 350,000 low propensity voters to come out and vote for Republicans. Now, the reason that that's important is because President Trump won Arizona by 160,000 votes, more than any other battleground state. And when you think about that, well, they turned out over 300,000 and President Trump won by 160,000. What does that mean? They literally turned Arizona for President Trump. And they did the same in Wisconsin, by the way. So that's how important they are, both to the state. And then they helped us keep, and what that did is that helped us keep Republicans on the rest. We won all the rest of the ballot. We did lose Kerry's race for Senate, but we won every other race. And what that tells you is that they're highly influential in our state, but then they also had a huge outsized influence around the country as well.
And there's a lot of people, and I don't mean to be political or disrespectful, obviously, but it is funny because I'm sure I keep going back in my head of the conversations that I've had with Charlie over the last, and like you, like I wasn't his best friend, but we texted a lot, we chatted. And I remember leading up to the election, there was a reporter, and I don't know if it was NPR or some left organization, I think it might have been Mother Jones, and they were calling me and saying TPUSA is making all these promises to their donors about what they're going to do with voter registration and turnout, and this app that they've done. Do you think it's a scam? Because they were trying to get me as a former RNC guy to talk smack about it. And I was texting with Charlie, and he was so confident at the time. To your point about, he's like, wait till they see election day, they're going to regret that they. And so we know they've been impactful. To your point about low propensity voters, is there any concern in your mind about TPUSA going forward and how we can make sure that this is truly an enduring mission?
No, there's not. I mean, my first thought, not first thought, but in the day, in the time hours that passed, and once we realized that Charlie had passed and Erika was there, and my thought was, is Erika going to take over, and who else is there? Then I realized, I'm sure they had a succession plan, but they also have the same quality people that Charlie surrounded himself with are all still there, and they're all mission oriented. And I was talking to one yesterday, and they were expressing to me how everybody on the campus in Phoenix is actually more committed than ever there. And you're starting to see young people are PO'd about this, so not a doubt in my mind. It's going to go. It's going to go.
It has to. I got to tell you, when I was 31, I think all I did was try to get enough money so that I could drink a few beers on a Friday and Saturday night. Look, I just got to be honest about it. I watched Erika Kirk on Friday night, and Congressman, I got to tell you, I did my first race in 1994. I have never seen that level of poise, courage, the commitment to her faith. Honest to God, I think that may be one of the best tributes that I'll ever hear in my life. Watching that woman, what was it, 36, 48 hours after her husband was assassinated, speak with that level of, and again, I don't even know the right words. I feel like my vocabulary, I'm not Charlie. It doesn't have the spectrum to give credit to what Erika Kirk did on Friday night. That was one of the most moving things I ever will see.
No, we're with you. I mean, my wife, my youngest daughter, and I sat down and we watched that. We were mesmerized. What do you say? I mean, it was a performance is not the right word. It was real and raw and sincere and perfect.
Yeah, but it goes back to, I don't know that I could give that speech today in my 50s. And watching Charlie debate on campuses and watch Erika speak on Friday night, I thought to myself, there's truly a gift that these individuals have been given. But I said this at the beginning of the show. Charlie got asked that profound question. They played it at the video last night at the Kennedy Center where they say, how would you want to be remembered? He said, for courage in my faith. And I thought about it. We don't ever get to read our obituaries. That's not how it works. And I'm watching these tributes pour in. I was at Mass Saturday night because I actually did a political event Saturday night. So I went to Mass on the way. There are priests in all denominations talking about Charlie Kirk at Mass or at services. There are NFL teams that stop. There are world leaders. And most people in their 70s or 80s wouldn't get the tributes that this 31-year-old man got. And I don't know, maybe it'll take some more time to fully appreciate the impact that he has had, not on our political system, but on our country and our world.
I'm with you. I mean, that's what I was trying to convey last night, is that he was not just a political figure. he was a cultural icon and a spiritual figure too, because, he always talked about his faith, but he would tell people, young people particularly, he'd say, get married, have children, have faith. That's a cultural message.
And the ability to, I don't, to your point, like, he was so clear about it. And I thought about, I literally have not had something impact me the way that this has, because it's made me reflect so much. I got to ask you though, the left keeps saying we need to turn the temperature down. And I know you guys, between the time in Arizona and the members that you're speaking with, what is the reaction among sort of elected Democrats that you've encountered? Are they, like, I feel like it's, when they mocked the other day, Jen Psaki and others said, I'm done with thoughts and prayers. I feel like to me, this is like, it's a throwaway line from the left. They're like, take the temperature down. And I'm like, I don't know that I'm ready to take the temperature down.
Yeah. So there were some Democrats that expressed sincere condolences, I think. But there were others who I think shared some of the outrageous comments of the left that we see. I mean, Sean, I used to not believe this, but I believe this more than ever, is that Congress really is a reflection of the populace. Really is. I mean, so you have some what I call rational Democrats. There are still a few of them left, but then you also have some that reflect that really kind of left-wing mania, hysteria that's out there, and who really hate people who are people of faith, people of, conservative values. They really do. And so some of the people on, that love Charlie that I've talked to, they would like to take the temperature down, but they can't, because we're the ones that are targeted. I'm the guy who received multiple subpoenas. I'm the guy that was investigated. I'm the guy that had all kinds of lies told about me, and continue to have lies told about me. I'm like, I wouldn't. We're talking J6 type stuff, and I'm like, I wasn't even there. I don't. But they will tell those lies repeatedly. They actually believe them themselves in spite of the evidence. That's the problem. I would like us to be able to, and we try to. I mean, I try to. If there's something that I agree with, like a Ro Khanna on, and he agrees with me. I mean, Ro's very approachable. He's a rational guy. He's a total left-wing liberal, but he's rational and he understands the limitations, and he also doesn't engage too often in oversized rhetoric. But I think that there's a lot of us that we're numb still. I think a lot of us are still angry still. We're also frustrated. Yeah. And the reality is they have conjured up that Charlie was this vicious, vile person. And yet you and I both know that's not true. And if you wanted an example of it, Sean, just watch the Oxford debates. Watch him talk to people at college. He was direct. He was firm, but you know what? He was not trying to antagonize necessarily. He was trying to actually inform and teach. Yeah. The other side persistently wishes to antagonize. Exactly. I'm walking, before that happened, the very day that Charlie was shot, in the morning, I'm walking from one committee hearing to another committee hearing. It's just a short little walk, about a 7-minute walk. And I'm accosted by a guy who immediately calls me a racist. And then when I basically said, I think you're a racist, I said, you're the real racist, and I'm walking along. And next thing you know, he's yelling at us. I'm walking with another member of Congress. He's yelling at us that we're Nazis. Yeah. You guys are Nazis. And that's the type of rhetoric that you get from the left. You're a fascist, you're a Nazi, you're Hitler. And guess what? Mentally ill people, or people who are indoctrinated in that way, they commit heinous acts of violence.
Agreed. Congressman, this weekend, you guys are going to play tribute to Charlie in the stadium that the Arizona Cardinals play in. That's a 60,000 seat
Yeah.
arena. Do you have any sense of what that's going to look like right now?
Yeah, right now, you can fit 80,000 people in their SRO, and I would not be surprised if you get 250,000 registration people to come, and so it will look a lot probably like when Trump had his rally there. They had big screen TVs out in the parking lots and whatnot and areas. I would imagine it's going to be something like that.
Congressman Andy Biggs, thanks for your words of comfort last night at the Kennedy Center, and I'm sure the next week is going to be extremely difficult for you and your constituents. But thank you for sharing your thoughts on Charlie and the work that he's done, the impact he's had. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Appreciate all you do.
You bet. Great conversation with Andy. Now let's talk about the legal consequences and the case against this assassin with Will Chamberlain of the Article 3 Project. Will, good to see you. On these unfortunate circumstances, but I think our audience is going to be really excited to hear your insight on all of this. So let me just start with the case against this assassin. As a non-lawyer, from what the Governor Spencer Cox and FBI Director Kash Patel have put out, is this an open and shut case from the standpoint of this? They've got a gun, the weapon. Apparently there's DNA evidence on it. You actually have video evidence of him leaving the roof. And so that alone should probably seal it. But then there's this discussion where he's confessing to family members and whatever. Is that there's nothing there that's what you guys would call inadmissible in court, correct?
Yeah, not that I've seen. I think that, I mean, obviously we don't know the details of how it was acquired. Maybe there's a Fourth Amendment violation somewhere that we're unaware of. So, but I would be shocked if there's any meaningful defense at this point. They have an enormous amount of evidence that they've lawfully acquired. All that video evidence is lawfully acquired, obviously. He has no right against it. You have the statements that he made, apparently confessing to his own father. That's all admissible. And so, I mean, you just go down the list of things that we have. The DNA evidence is going to be admissible. Almost none of this was acquired via a search of his own home, as far as I can tell, which is normally where you might have Fourth Amendment issues. But even then, given all the other stuff, you would have probable cause for a search of the home, so it wouldn't be an issue there either. So, I think this is a pretty open and shut case. The real question is going to come down to whether a death penalty charge is viable and where under whether federal or state law, whether a death penalty charge is viable, and what's the best way to proceed if we want the guy to face a death sentence.
So the governor of Utah, Spencer Cox, says that they are going to file this.
Mm-hmm.
So explain the difference between, like, will there be two cases, a federal case and a state case, or do you let one go and then say, if it doesn't go the way you want, you file the other one?
I mean, you essentially, there's the opportunity to do both. The idea being that if the federal case contains elements, or the federal charge rather contains elements that aren't in the state aggravated murder charge, then that's the basis for adding another prosecution on top of it. It wouldn't be double jeopardy because you're at, if you were to prosecute, say, for conspiracy against rights, you have to prove, in addition to the murder, the conspiracy, and that the conspiracy targeted Charlie Kirk's exercise of his rights. So you could have multiple prosecutions. And I'm not sure there will be. It depends. Obviously, if you manage to successfully prosecute and convict the guy on a state charge that has a death penalty attached to it, there wouldn't be a need for a federal prosecution, probably. But absent, if there's for some reason you aren't able to get an aggravated murder charge in Utah, I could easily see a circumstance where they decide to also prosecute him federally to get a death penalty charge.
So, Will, the governor has said that he's preparing a death penalty case. Do me a favor, put yourself in the shoes of a defense attorney for this assassin. Is the goal maybe to get him off, or would it be primarily, hey, we need to get the death penalty taken off the table? What would be the first goal here?
Yeah, I think that would be the approach here. I don't think I'd spend too much time trying to defeat the murder charge. I think that he's dead to rights on it. I'd tell him, if he were my client, I'd tell him that and our goal is to negotiate a way, basically, to get rid of a death penalty charge and to get you life in prison. That would be essentially a realistic prospect.
What would be the argument? I mean, why? So is it, hey, we'll cooperate, but you got to take the death? I mean, because to your point, if I'm the prosecutor, and pardon me because I watch too much Law and Order, I would say, I got you dead, to use your words, I got you dead to rights anyway. I got the gun. I got the motive. There's a bunch of stuff you said online. I got you. I don't need to take anything off the table. What would a defense attorney say to argue that should be taken off the table?
Well, I think you first try and look at the law in Utah. The law in Utah, actually, I mean, I don't know that a lot of people have done detailed analysis, but I've been reading it pretty carefully. I think that it's not at all obvious that they can get a death penalty sentence off of that they can prosecute him for aggravated murder and win the conviction. And the reason is not that he didn't murder the guy. Obviously, he did, but the aggravated circumstances are enumerated in the statute, right? They say if you, for example, have previously been convicted of a murder or a violent felony and you commit a murder, that's aggravated murder. If you shoot a peace officer or a person holding political office and the assassination is related to that office, that's a aggravated murder. Charlie held some sort of political office. He's on the board of the directors of, I think, the Air Force Academy, so that could theoretically qualify. But then it's hard to say that he was murdered because of that position. He's clearly more murdered because of his speech. There's a aggravation that says, well, if you put other people in danger, that could be aggravated murder, but it's not obvious that that would stick because he was a sniper shooting a single bullet targeted at Kirk. So there's a lot of ways in which the ability to get an aggravating circumstance, there's not something that is about assassinating a political commentator or a prominent person in politics. There's not something about going after somebody for their speech rights. So the lack of an obvious and clear aggravating circumstance is, if I were his defense attorney, I'd be negotiating with the Utah authorities saying, look, you're not going to get him on the death penalty charge. We're going to fight it tooth and nail. You're going to go through a bazillion appeals. We think you'll lose on that. If we agree to simply plead out on a normal murder charge and accept life without parole, that'll save you a lot of time and a lot of appeals, and ultimately be the accurate sentence under Utah law. That would be the way I'd approach it.
Am I hearing you say that there's a difference between murdering somebody and what they call aggravated murder? Is that there's a distinction? And that
under Utah law, yes, under Utah law.
Okay, and you'd have to hit one of those wickets.
Yeah, you have to hit something to make it aggravated murder to seek the death penalty.
Okay, and how about federal law? Could they pursue the death penalty under federal law?
Yes, I think actually that's, if we're probably going to get a death sentence here, my belief is that, based on not a huge amount of research, but my limited amount of research, that the most likely avenue is federal law. 18 U.S.C. 241 is conspiracy against rights, which is basically if you conspire against people's civil rights, it's a criminal charge. But one of the things it also includes is that if this conspiracy against rights leads to the death of somebody, that you can be charged for murder and sentenced to death for it. And so if Mr. Robinson did indeed conspire with anybody else to silence Charlie Kirk, and then the way they chose to do that, to silence him for exercising his First Amendment rights, the way they chose to do that was killing him, then that's a death penalty charge under federal law. So I think that's to me, of all the available charges, both federal and state, that's the cleanest path to a death penalty sentence.
What about if you're the defense attorney, you argue that he was radicalized online to believe that Charlie Kirk was a bad guy, and the real culprit here is Facebook, Meta, Google, YouTube, TikTok, whatever, right? Because they created this existential, or the Democrats, frankly, they created this idea that Charlie posed an existential threat, and he was radicalized under them, and he's got mental health issues, and so he's a sick individual, and therefore he should get off or not be subject to the death penalty because he has mental health issues. Is that a viable defense?
I'm not certain. I actually don't. This is where I'm kind of, off of my research and just sort of speculating. I know for a fact that, these death penalty sentences have to be agreed to by a jury. So the exact nature of the arguments you're going to be allowed to make to a jury in the in the sentencing phase, I'm not sure of. It strikes me that they probably would be able to make arguments like this.
Could that just be an affirmative defense that I did it, but I was sick when I did, I watch a lot of TV on this stuff, or I don't watch it anymore, but could they say he was mentally ill? He didn't know what he was doing. He wasn't in his right mind.
I think that charge is almost certainly going to fail. This isn't an insanity defense here would be a real struggle because it's not merely, it's not understanding the quality of the act you're engaged in. And there's a whole bunch of conduct here that indicates a lack of insanity. The fact that he, chose a sniper rifle, scouted out the location beforehand, had an exit strategy, didn't carry a phone with him to avoid electronic detection. He did a lot of things to, wore a hat and sunglasses. He did all this stuff that was a sane attempt to evade capture, even though it ultimately failed, and I think was futile from the get-go. It seems to me, but he tried to evade capture. He chose a means of killing the guy and planned it out in a very premeditated way. None of this screams insanity to me. This all strikes me as very much he's clearly going to be found competent to stand trial, even if and any arguments about he was indoctrinated into some crazy belief system doesn't matter. That's not insanity. Insanity is the inability to understand what it is you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, all these steps that he took seemed to me that you might be a little nuts, but you knew exactly what you were doing because you planned it so well. Let me pivot to what's going on online, especially with people supporting the death, the murder of Charlie Kirk, and where is the line between my ability to express something and so my First Amendment rights to say, I don't like this guy. I think he had what he got coming to him. And sort of my rights as an employee, because I think we're going after people, and the left is finally seeing what the right has dealt with for decades. But so I know that this is new to them, but I'm watching people, teachers, pilots, doctors, healthcare workers, all kind of go, why can't I say what I believe?
Well, I mean, there's two categories of this, right? There's public employees and private employees. Private employees, you sign contracts all the time that have morality clauses that don't allow you to do things that damage the brand of your company. That's, and most employment is fundamentally at will. So, a lot of private employees don't have much of a leg to stand on if they complain that they're getting fired for publicly celebrating the assassination of a domestic political opponent, which they shouldn't. Honestly, it's abhorrent behavior. It's about as anti-democratic as it gets. The entire basis of democracy is that we talk with each other, we express views, we honor each other as opponents. There's nothing more damaging to democracy than political assassination. The end result of, if political assassination becomes normalized, the end result of that is civil war. You just have to play that out for a few years and to think about what it means when everybody keeps assassinating the other side's political figures. That ends up in civil war. So there should be really dramatic social sanction for public appreciation or public celebration of assassination. As for public employees and also some unionized employees, they have some contractual rights or civil service protections that mean that it's hard to outright fire them. But that's why you see a lot of those people being placed on administrative leave. That said, if you're a public employee, especially your free First Amendment rights are not as broad as everybody else's, especially when it comes to things that would affect your ability to perform your job. You have I remember you worked in the government. You remember the Hatch Act, and I was under the same thing when I worked for the state of Florida. There are real constraints on what you can say and when you can say it, and also there's not the same protections in terms of you express some really bizarre, wacko political belief, you can still be fired for it, even if you have a First Amendment right to do it.
So does it matter if I put it out on X or Twitter or if I said it in a group chat? I mean, in other words, if I can argue that wasn't supposed to be public, I was chatting with Will Chamberlain in a private group chat, and I said, wow, I think this is great. Can I argue that that wasn't a public utterance and therefore my private conversation shouldn't be public?
That's nuanced enough that it's going to depend on the nature of either the morality clauses in your private contract or the specific civil service protections in a given state, right? Whatever your particular level of employment is. There's not, that said, I just think all this sort of speech is not the kind of stuff that's like a First Amendment protection to protect you from being fired from a public position. I don't think so. And, you think about because obviously that would it would lead to a circumstance where you couldn't fire teachers for expressing absolutely abhorrent and awful beliefs. And then somehow the public is supposed to trust these people as stewards of their children's education. That doesn't, intuitively, that can't be right. And so, usually in cases like these, the law follows your intuition.
Right. And I feel like there's a difference between saying, I disagree with Charlie Kirk's position on trans or life or whatever, then I want him dead. Like that's where to me the line is. Death and violence are different than my expressing a disagreement with somebody and saying, I don't like what they say, or I disagree with their opinion.
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. And that's true. And I think mostly that's how, most of the people that are getting fired, this isn't merely saying I didn't like Charlie Kirk. This is stuff where you're celebrating his death, expressing glee, mocking mocking conservatives who were upset about it. Like, really, really abhorrent stuff. I mean, you're seeing it in person too. You're seeing at vigils, people stomping out flowers, calling in bomb threats. It's really remarkable. Just crazy.
I also think there's like a stupidity clause, which is if you're dumb enough to post something about a violent act with your company name in your profile, I think I would just fire you because you're stupid too. Because I think there's a level of like, you literally put our company's name and then posted it. Like, it's one thing, again, that's why, like, I think on a group chat, it's one thing. If you literally are that dumb that you put your company logo or description in your social media and then say something completely stupid, I'd fire you just for that.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's remarkable that I feel like the left didn't really grasp that they could actually violate red lines, that they could cross red lines with their rhetoric. There was just this default assumption that they were on the morally good side. Conservatives were on the morally bad side. It was only conservatives who really had to worry about being fired for their rhetoric. And they're finding out that actually, no, there are standards of public decorum that apply to you too, not just conservatives.
It's amazing how suddenly, I think that's what's been fascinating, is watching them go, wow, I guess there is a line to how crazy we can go. We've canceled you guys in the past for just I mean, that was the thing that I always found fascinating, is that I could say, I don't want to use pronouns. Like, I find that like, it's just ridiculous. And then I would get canceled for not agreeing to their thing. And they had no problem with that. But now that they're expressing the agreement with a violent act, that they're like, I thought I could say anything I wanted.
Yeah, free speech for me, but not for thee. They really didn't grasp that actually cheering on the assassination of their political opponents would be a firing offense, but it is, and it is in any normal society. It's just something that has to be. If we're going to have a democracy where people are supposed to be able to express their opinions peacefully, if we're going to have a First Amendment, all that is meaningless in a world of rampant political assassination. In a world where political assassination is normalized.
A lot of people are bringing up the security issue at the university. Is the university culpable? I mean, like, in other words, I've been on a lot of college campuses. I've spoken. I know the threat that exists. I know Charlie obviously knew. He talked about it openly. Is the university culpable at all for not having a better security plan, or is that a risk that's assumed when you sort of set up in the middle of a quad?
I don't know. That's a good question. And I don't know what standard practice is in these circumstances. I think we haven't really seen an attempt at an assassination like this on a college campus in a long time. It's not something that I can recall. And so I don't blame the university necessarily for not treating Charlie Kirk's visit like they would a presidential visit. That seems excessive. And, it'd be one thing. I think you have a lot bigger claim when we're used to presidential assassinations or assassinations of major political figures. They do more to care for it. But Charlie ultimately was outside of this board of directors thing. He was a private citizen. I wouldn't have come in thinking you'd have to secure every single building around a quad.
Yeah, I generally agree with that. I mean, like, it's like, if you want to go on our campus and speak, here's what the thing is. But what I do worry about, Will, is going forward. Do the universities use this as an opportunity to say, hey, Sean Spicer, Will Chamberlain, we cannot secure this adequately knowing the threats that we face now. Therefore, we will not allow you to come onto our campus and speak freely. And that's going to be their new excuse.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work. I think that's a First Amendment violation. And I suspect that with Harmeet Dillon at the head of the Civil Rights Division, that won't be allowed to stand. The universities are obligated, especially public universities, they're obligated to allow speakers of a wide variety of viewpoints. Just because right-wing people are not crazy and left-wing people are, that's not an excuse. They will need to solve the problem of how to provide security. And there's lots of ways to do that. You can simply handle or at least reasonably secure a speaking event. I think this may be the end of the sort of public quad type of speaking events by major conservative figures, because those are so hard to secure. But that doesn't mean you won't see similar events being held indoors in a building that can be reasonably secure.
The last thing I want to ask you about, Will, is this. I believe that for the last 10 years, so if you think back to this guy, the assassin, for the last 10 years, all he has heard online, in academia, in social settings is that the right, Donald Trump, the MAGA movement, are a threat to democracy, their words, and that they pose an existential threat to our well-being. And so the question is there a way that, if you're Charlie or Turning Point, that you could go after the social media companies and say, you allowed this radicalization to occur, you have permitted it to happen, and therefore you bear some of the burden?
I don't know. I think it's a real challenge. I mean, off the top of my head, that would be really challenging. That's a Section 230 problem, because the social media platforms are generally not held liable for the speech of their users in a wide variety of contexts. So my intuition just says that's probably a real challenge, especially vis-a-vis trying to sue Facebook for radicalization that happens on their platform. That said, it's probably a good reason to start looking at Section 230.
So let me just throw you my idea, though, which is, I get it. Section 230 says that they're a platform. So Facebook, am not responsible for what Sean Spicer or Will Chamberlain posts. But where they are responsible, Will, is this. Their algorithm sends you down nasty rabbit holes that allow you to do everything from hear voices that you would have never heard. It's one thing to say, I went on Facebook, I read Sean Spicer's thing, or I read Article 3 or Will Chamberlain, and I agreed or disagreed. But what Facebook and these other social media platforms are guilty of, in my opinion, is that they then feed you other things to try to bring you in a direction that you might not have otherwise gone. That's where I believe they're culpable.
I mean, I think you're right in the sense that they're morally culpable for this. I think these platforms should, given the rights that they have under current law, put a stop to this. There's no reason to tolerate, Hassan Piker on Twitch, for example, who regularly calls for the assassination of people. There are some real insane people, and I think they should do something about it. I also think, this is where the federal government comes in general. I think they should be looking at these leftist streamers. There's some angles to go after some of these leftist streamers that aren't necessarily about their speech. But rather they've engaged in things like criminal copyright infringement. Hassan regularly would put YouTube videos off and walk YouTube videos up on his channel, privately copyrighted content, and then walk away. Meanwhile, he's collecting advertising revenue from Twitch for not literally doing nothing other than just infringing on somebody's copyright. So I think we need to be creative and look at what, these people need to be looked at. They've engaged in conduct that's reprehensible. Now, whether they can be prosecuted for that specific conduct or whether they can be gone after kind of Al Capone style for things incidental to that conduct, I don't really care. I think it's, the federal government needs to take a hard look at these people who are really broadcasting, inciting people to commit murder.
Right. Well, Chamberlain, I really appreciate your insights on a day like today. We need to understand what we're facing, and you really always bring it. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
You bet. Guys, thanks for being here. We've got a great show coming your way tomorrow. Ted Cruz and Eric Schmidt are going to be here. My newsletter is going to go up all about this both sides-ism. You're going to want to see it. Go to SeanSpicer.com and sign up. It's for free. Thanks for being here. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.